Thank you. All right. Good morning, folks. Thanks for your patience. We're going to get started right away. Um, while you're joining the Zoom from the waiting room, if you don't mind just adding your name, the office that you're joining us from, if you're a member of the legislature or legislator's staff, or if you're with an organization that works in the food system space, that's also welcome. We'd love to just know who's joining us and if there's anything that you're looking forward to learning today. So my name is Becca Miller. I am the policy director at the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative. I'm going to be our MC this morning. We're so excited to talk about House 121 and Senate 61, an act relative to urban farmland, or as I like to call it, the Vacant Lots to Farms bill. It's this bill's first session, so we're really excited to do this briefing this morning with you all, as well as the bill's sponsors and a lot of really knowledgeable practitioners. So just very briefly, I'm going to talk about why turn vacant lots into farms. So just for a little bit of context and background, this idea isn't new. This has been done at the grassroots level for many years, both in Massachusetts and in other states across the nation. One really important example that I'd like to lift up for us all is the Dudley Square Neighborhood Initiative in Boston, which there are many books written about, including Streets of Hope. Highly recommend if folks haven't read that, checking it out, which turned a lot of vacant lots in that neighborhood in Roxbury and Dorchester into farms, into affordable housing, into many different needs that the community had at the time. And so that example was called out in the state's 2023 Resilient Lands Initiative, which was published by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. And so the idea for this bill really came from that report and that work that has been done for many years of turning vacant lots into farms, including urban farms, community gardens, and other types of urban agriculture. We're not really, partisan here. We want to support all forms of food production. And as well as the really important work that MDAR's Urban Agriculture Grant has done for the past decade and more, which includes supporting several, I want to say around 5 different land purchases for increased food production with urban producers, which is really important. And I want to shout out Rose Aruda at MDAR, who has led that work, as well as many other grant programs in her time at MDAR. Also, for a little bit of context setting, Massachusetts farmland is really expensive. It's about $14,000 or more per acre. This is one of the highest, I believe, top 5 costs in the nation. And at the same time, we're losing farmland. Between 2017 and 2022, the most recent Census of Agriculture from the U.S. Department of Ag, we lost 27,000 acres. And once farmland is gone, it's really hard to get it back. And we're losing it to both abandonment, development, and other reasons. At the same time, we also see food insecurity is still high, and there are multiple costs to setting up urban farms and community gardens. So the goal of this legislation is to really continue to support the successful conversion of vacant lots and underutilized spaces into community gardens, urban farms, and other forms of urban food production for many benefits that my wonderful co-presenters will talk about. And with that, I will pass it to, to Representative Duffy from the 5th Hampshire District.
Hamden.
Hamden, I'm sorry.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Quick thanks to Becca for bringing us all together, to the Food Policy Council, to the Food Policy Legislative Caucus for their support of this bill too. And thanks to MDAR and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for doing something so cool as having an urban agriculture week. It's really amazing. So I'm Pat Duffy. I am the state rep for the 5th Hamden District. That's the city of Holyoke and a precinct of Chicopee. I'm the House sponsor of this bill and act relative to urban farmland. And I'm going to talk a little bit big picture. Becca hit a lot of these points, but just sort of why this is kind of a passion project for me. So here I live in Holyoke. It's a gateway city, like many gateway cities across the Commonwealth, and like the urban part of Hampden County, Holyoke, Springfield, Chicopee. So, and Holyoke is it's a beautiful city. It's historical buildings, diverse population. but we have our share of challenges. That's why we're a gateway city. And these come from historic deindustrialization, the poverty that comes with that, historic disenfranchisement, disinvestment. So we have this big, beautiful, dense downtown neighborhood. And in that neighborhood, there are a number of vacant lots. They're a challenge. They're a challenge. But we can look at them as opportunities. So community gardens, urban agriculture, this legislation and the tools it provides, it's one of those ways that we can look at questions and challenges and really come up with what I see as new and exciting answers. So vacant lots, they're opportunities. Here we're talking about their opportunities to produce food. They're opportunities for green space. As Becca mentioned, there's already numerous community gardens all over the state, exciting urban agricultural projects. And these are places where families and friends can work together. Opportunities for community building, forging connections. Here in the Pioneer Valley, including this urban part of Hampden County, we are part of a beautiful agricultural region. In Holyoke, next to these downtown neighborhoods, we're lucky enough to have Nuestras Raíces. You'll hear more about them momentarily. They're producing food and forging connections with the region's farmers in their work at farmers markets. They're coming into our downtown, creating these community gardens, forging connections between generations. Children can learn about their family's roots, their family's traditions, and they can go into the middle of the city, into their neighborhoods, and learn about agriculture, learn about what's happening around them in the region. Holyoke is a place with food deserts. What if we addressed our food deserts by growing food right in the middle of them? Holyoke is a place with health and nutrition challenges, that often go hand in hand with systemic poverty. What if we bring better food and nutrition education right into our schools? I'm a big proponent of farm to school meal programs. There's a wonderful one in Chicopee. We can expand and support that kind of education. We can bring those gardens and farms right into students' neighborhoods. So I think this legislation, these tools, they give us the opportunity to look at vacant lots. They don't have to be sources of despair or disappointment or sometimes fear. They can really be places of beauty and work and health and nutrition. And this legislation is one path to bring us there. It's really important. It's really timely. Those were sort of the broad points that I wanted to touch on. And with that, I think that my Senate partner is here, I believe. My good friend and partner and colleague, Senator Adam Gomez, who's the Senate sponsor.
Hi, I'm sorry. Sarah Gomez is kind of held up in an event right now. Is there any chance we could circle past him and Liz's portion and maybe get him at the towards the latter half of the event? Becca.
Sure. Rep Duffy, do you mind introducing Jason now?
Oh yeah, and so I'll introduce Jason now, and then Jason can talk about Nuestras Raíces. That is fantastic. So Jason Komkowicz, he just gave me a tutorial on pronouncing his name. Thank you so much. I'm just getting to know Jason. I'm so excited to be working with him. He came to Nuestras Raíces in September 2022 through the TerraCore program, and he since transitioned into development in September 2023. So here for a few years, and he's got this incredible background. Farming, gardening, he was a farm to table chef. He's an organizer, an activist. He described himself to me as a guerrilla urban gardener. I love that. He's run farm to kitchen programs, run food skills education programs, just all kinds of really cool, interesting stuff that I'm sure he'll be touching on too. And with that, I give you Jason Komkowicz.
Thank you very much, Rep. Duffy. All right, so I'm Jason Komkowicz, the Development and Community Partnerships Director here at Nuestras Raíces in Holyoke, Mass. A little bit about what we do. So our primary focus is urban agriculture. We have 8 community gardens here and a 30-acre urban farm. In our history, I think we've started about 17 or 18 different community gardens over the years. Some of them have transitioned on into other hands. We also run a lot of farmer training programs, often through the USDA, specifically the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, Agriculture Marketing Services, and the Office of Public Partnership Engagement. We also do a lot of small business technical assistance. A lot of the folks in our community who are entrepreneurs often have a lot of trouble navigating some of the barriers in the systems here. So we provide a lot of ad hoc support as well as regular ongoing workshops in things like tax preparation, financial management, some business planning support. We also run a mobile produce market, which brings food directly to food insecure communities here in Holyoke that is HIP accessible, which a lot of folks here don't have points of access that they can easily use their HIP benefits. So that's, especially this year, people have been really appreciative of that service. We also do a lot of community leadership development. We've been around for about 34 years. When our founding farmers, who were themselves working at other farms in the region but didn't have land to produce their own land, saw opportunities in the vacant lots here in Holyoke and were like, hey, let's start a community garden. 34 years later, youth who graduated of our programs years ago are now the executive directors of other community organizations here, have gotten involved in politics, have gone into careers in public health, and a number of other beneficial things to the community, specifically because of the exposure at a young age to the connections between food, health, and being able to have agency over your environment. And we also do food as medicine programming, where we work with patients with different chronic conditions and do produce boxes and nutrition education and culturally tailored to really specifically say how we could make things within the cultural diaspora here at Diet more healthy through better sourcing and creating pathways for people to have that better produce. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of level setting here about what we're talking about in food insecurity. So this is the data from last year published in June in Mass Live, showing the increases in food insecurity in Mass in advance of the OBB passing. Now think about this, that we have all this food insecurity here rising, and we're going to be experiencing tens of billions of dollars in federal cuts to these programs that are not only going to cause extreme amounts of food security rising, starvation, but they're also going to put a lot of farm businesses out of business, because 72% of direct farmer to consumer sales in this state, I believe there's a statistic about now, are through HIP transactions and through SNAP benefits programs. So we're going to see massive amounts of trouble from the OBBB unless we can drastically shift our strategy in thinking about how we create accessible pathways to food. Next slide, please. All right, so when we're talking about barriers to access impacting our community, we really have to think about the cultural context here. So our community that Nuestra serves is predominantly Puerto Rican and Caribbean cultural descent. So we have to think about the centuries of historic disinvestment and wealth extraction that have happened to peoples there, and then combine that with the spiraling climate change effects. We saw during Hurricane Maria in 2019, about 80% of Puerto Rico's food system went out the drain. And that caused extreme costs in the cost of living there, because so much more of the food then had to be imported. And a lot of folks weren't able to make that back. So they've been coming to gateway cities like Holyoke because there's already established cultural community here, as well as opportunity outside of what is available now, that so much damage has been done that hasn't been fixed to the island. And looking at that as a snapshot, it's just one cultural community and the impacts of climate change, and thinking about all the other places on this planet where people are experiencing any number of hardships, where they need to find a new place to recenter, and the extraction of the generational wealth from those people, and the barriers that creates then in being able to transition somewhere new. We also have to look at language and technology accessibility, regulatory and cost burdens. There's a lot of small costs that come up when trying to run some of the the farming businesses that folks here have. They don't always know how to navigate the systems, and having intermediary supports like Nuestras is essential for people being able to get by and have these businesses, and as well as to access capital. There's a lot of systemic racism still present, especially in communities of color here, trying to access capital. And combine that with the historic wealth extraction, it becomes more difficult to have a business. And then we also have to think about the cuts to all these assistance programs and what the downstream impacts of that are going to be, especially on more vulnerable communities. But central to this all is accessibility to land. Land is the means by which we produce our food. And the more creative solutions we can have to have land in the hands of communities, the better off these communities will be to be able to be resilient, to survive, as well as to be healthier, to have less social problems. When you don't have your needs met, the downstream effects of that can get pretty bad. And here we see an example, our farm in the background. So this is through a deal with the trustees of reservations. This is 25-acre parcel, and we provide this to 12 different small farming businesses. Next slide, please. So some of the connections, we see some of our herbs growing for our CSA. We see some of our farmer training programs. One of our farmers have set up some produce here for one of their festivals, and we see our Darwin running our mobile market. That was 2 years ago, but that program is still going today. I just like that picture. But all of these are possible because we have access to this resource of land. Next slide, please. And just as a snapshot, our Nuestra Arboles Nuestra Salud program, we are currently managing U.S. Forest Service money to lead the community to be able to identify places to plant trees, and including edible species and fruit trees and orchards. And we're training a whole new generation of youth leaders to be able to identify lands, gain permission to access it, and be able to plant on it. But the more support that we can have, the more we can empower these emerging leaders to find the creative solutions we need to be able to feed our communities. And it's predominantly taking place in environmental justice communities here in Holyoke. And some of you present here actually joined us yesterday at a tree planting ceremony. Here's our Nuestra team planting a serviceberry in a Pina Park, which actually came from one of our community gardens, lobbying the city to be like, hey, we want a community garden here, or we have a community garden here, we want another park. Next slide, please. I believe I am almost out of time. So in general, this access to land allows us to be able to implement a whole series of different policy systems and environmental change strategies. It puts the power in the hands of community members here who often feel disinvested, or that there's not opportunity. So creating these opportunities has been essential for our community, and developing leadership capacities, developing food security. And we really appreciate this legislation because it will support those causes even further. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jason. I think that is right at the 7-minute mark, so thanks for that. I do see Senator Adam Gomez has joined us, so I'll pass it to him in a moment. But I did just want to shout out that Chair Natalie Blais, Chair of the Joint Committee on Agriculture and Fisheries, has joined us, and I just wanted to say that we really appreciate her. I know it's a very busy week for good to see you, folks, with all the wonderful events like Jason put on this week. So for folks that aren't in the legislature, a lot of folks are in the district in August, so we appreciate folks like Senator Adam Gomez from the Handham district in the Senate running from event to event. Chair Blais, if you want to say anything, you're welcome to, but we don't have to.
I just want to pipe in, Senator, I do not want to interrupt, but I was at Nuestras yesterday, and a lot has been said here today about the extraordinary work that you're doing. Rep. Pat Duffy does an extraordinary job representing the city of Holyoke, and what I saw there on the ground was absolutely amazing. It was inspiring. It was multi-generational. We saw young children, putting their hands in the dirt, talking about what the dirt smelled like and what the trees smelled like. And it was hot, but it was tremendously joyful. And I just want to recognize the great work, Jason, that you and your team are doing, and also the incredible leadership of Representative Pat Duffy and her team with Juan. Senator Gomez, I'm sorry to butt in there, but I really just had to highlight this incredible event that we had yesterday in Holyoke, and the fact that we still have urban ag events going on across the Commonwealth this week. So make sure you take advantage of one of those, get involved, see what's happening. It is absolutely amazing. Thank you, Becca. Appreciate that quick moment.
And without further ado, Senator Adam Gomez.
Good morning, everyone. Just want to give a big shout out to my friend and colleague, Rep. Duffy, but also Rep. Blais. Always welcome, of course, my sister. I'm happy to hear that you had that experiences. It's one of those experiences that I grew up with, and something that I hold dear to my heart here within the Hamden District and across the Commonwealth. So I just want to tell everyone, sorry that I was tardy. I'm jumping from one thing to another. But we're just coming from an ecological restoration in Chicopee, a great event, obviously having to do with our environment and obviously our green space. So I just wanted to thank everyone here today for showing up to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, turning empty lots into places that give life back to our neighborhoods. I represent the cities of Springfield and Chicopee, but I'm usually known as someone that will visit your community if you give me the opportunity to. So communities where too many blocks have been fenced off, overgrown lots that sit there year after year, that they're not just eyesores, they're just wasted potential. And in some cases, they're health hazards and they don't absorb water when it rains. They trap heat in the summer, they collect trash, they certainly don't do a thing to clean up our air. This bill, H 1872 and S 1093, is about changing all of that. It's about reclaiming these spaces and turning them into urban farms and community gardens that feed people, clean our air, and give our neighborhoods another reason to be proud. The vision is simple, right? We create a fund focused on communities that have been hit the hardest by pollution, climate change, disinvestment, and our environmental justice communities. Think about what happens when we replace a patch of cracked asphalt with rows of vegetables, herbs, and pollinator plants. We're filtering the air, we're pulling carbon and pollutants out and giving back clean oxygen. We're cooling the block because plants don't trap heat like blacktop does, which means we fight the urban heat island effect. We're helping with stormwater management because healthy soil absorbs rain instead of letting it flood our streets. And it's not just about the environment, it's about all of our communities, all of our people. This fund will give grants to cities, towns, and nonprofits and community groups to buy or lease vacant land, build urban farms with gardens, create agricultural education programs for kids, and job training for adults. Make sure a portion of that, what's grown, goes straight to the residents facing food insecurity. I want to stress this part. In neighborhoods like the North End of Springfield, where asthma rates are high, a place where I was born, raised, and raising my children till this day, Where folks may have to travel to find fresh produce, in the community that I live in is a food desert. I still live in this community, like I stated, and where the summer heat is harder than the affluent areas, urban farms and community gardens are health intervention. They are climate resilience. They are community resilience. We're also making sure that spaces stay green. Once a lot is converted into farmland or a garden, it is protected by conservation easement. That means there is for the long haul and not just until someone decides to build over it. We all know climate change isn't waiting for us to get ready. It's here. Every year we have hotter summers, heavier rains, and more strain on our public health systems. Urban agriculture is one of those rare solutions that tackles several challenges at once. It fights climate change, it cleans the air, and creates green jobs and improves access to healthy food, and it strengthens the bonds to our neighborhoods. Communities and cities with increased green space have seen real results: cleaner air, cooler streets, safer spaces, and new opportunities for residents. Massachusetts can do it too, and we can do it in a way that makes equity and justice the foundation, not an afterthought. I'm asking all of you, every single one of you in these Hollywood squares, whether you're here as an advocate, a farmer, a neighbor, or as an elected official, to help us get this bill over the finish line. Talk about it in your network, share to your stories on why green spaces matter, show the human side of what a garden or a farm can do for a block, a family, and a community. Because at the end of the day, this bill is about more than growing food. It's about growing health, hope, and opportunity in the places that need it the most. Let's take these lots that have been forgotten and transform into something nourishing, positive, and something that we all can be proud of. Liz Ogilvie is one of those people who doesn't just talk about food justice, she makes it happen. She helped lead the creation of new $21 million Springfield Culinary and Nutrition Center, where healthy meals are made from scratch every single day, featuring locally grown food from our district's school children. She fought to bring free breakfast to Springfield Public Schools classrooms and worked to make sure our schools qualified for our federal free lunch program. I want to thank GTC. I want to thank Liz for being a partner, and most recently in her role as director of the Springfield Food Policy Council. Liz, I just have to give you a shout out and give you your flowers while I had a chance to. She was honored this past year as a heroine, and because of the work that calls her, she was unavailable for me to be able to honor her at the State House because she was fighting for all of us in the Commonwealth and here in the city of Springfield. So, Liz, salute to you and your team, and obviously to all the advocates that are here on the call. Thank you for the opportunity. Again, my apologies for being slight tardy, but I'm happy to be here with all of you, and I'm looking forward to onward the fight goes on. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Shall I just jump in, Becca?
Yes, please. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Senator Gomez. You give me flowers every single time I see you. I've been chasing Senator Gomez around since he was a city councilor, fussing about food. And I don't think he'll mind my saying his own lived experiences with health challenges that are related to a lack of access to healthy food are they're just an example of what so many residents struggle with. I just want to tag Jason before I jump in and say that Hampden County has been ranked last in terms of food-related, preventable, life-shortening chronic diseases since the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation started ranking county health. And I always want to say, I don't want to be first. I don't want county health needs to be ranked. But what that played out, how that played out for us, COVID, which, I will carry as trauma for the rest of my life. Holyoke and Springfield saw the greatest loss per capita of human beings, of people that we knew, our neighbors. And the CDC estimates that 96% of them had a food-related preventable disease that contributed to their losing their lives or having long-term health outcomes from COVID. So a lot of people got sick, but more Black and brown people died in this country than anyone else because we struggled with diseases like hypertension, the disease of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes, and everything that Nuestras and the Food Policy Council and Gardening the Community are working on, along with urban ag organizations across the Commonwealth. Becca Miller and I and Lydia Sisson in the middle of the pandemic worked together to build an urban ag network, and that network is represented by nearly every municipality in the Commonwealth. And we're really proud of that. And so, like Nuestras, we have a lot of strategies. I have been trained by folks in public health to think about our work through a policy systems and environmental change lens. And so this is a screen from a site that we set up separate from our website to tell the story of the work that we do. And I'm very fortunate to have our health policy associate who's on the screen. Helen, wave at everyone. I brag all the time that I have the youngest and the brownest epidemiologist in the state and across the country. Helen graduated with her master's in epidemiology last year and will be leaving me and us at the end of this year, not this calendar year, but next year, to go off and get her PhD in epidemiology. Her father is an immigrant refugee Kenyan farmer from whom we bought a lot of food that supported our local work. This bill is so important because we can't grow enough food to meet the need. And I have been working on federal advocacy for the last probably 8 or 9 years, usually working on the Farm Bill, and then in the last few years, more aggressively recognizing, sadly, the direction that those of us working in ag, feared we might be going, to both try to get the 2018 Farm Bill, which never passed, across the line, and to also, I'm sorry, not 2018, 2022, but also now to mitigate the horrific impacts of the reconciliation bill, which we are still figuring out what those cuts could look like. But with 37,000 households dependent upon SNAP in Springfield alone, when we start cutting, it's not just going to be the families who won't have access to food, both it used to be known as Seatown. Oh, it's Key Foods now in Holyoke, and several grocery stores in the more marginalized communities in Springfield will close if those cuts go into effect as predicted, because they all report upwards of 60% of their revenue coming from SNAP sales. So I tell you that to say we have to grow more food, and the only way we can grow it is with access to more land. And I have to thank Rosa Ruda, who's on screen from MDAR, because she makes so much of our work possible. Our strategy, like Nuestras, who we learned a lot from, because I said to Pat Duffy, I want to lift up. Urban ag sometimes in the eastern part of the state can have a very white face on it because many of the EDs who lead these organizations are not people of color. They're amazing, wonderful people, but they are not people of color. But Nuestras has historically and is still led by a Puerto Rican woman with Holyoke roots who helped mentor Gardening the Community many years ago and has remained a partner and inspiration to us. We approach our work through community gardens. We have just embarked, if you look at the access to healthy food segment of this pie, and you'll see it's pointing to, we've started our most recent community food assessment. We are not going to re-ask the same questions. We are trying to look at the questions that were asked and make sure that we're asking the right questions now. We partner with healthcare entities, early learning centers, K through 12 schools. You heard Senator Gomez talk about our work with Springfield Public Schools, colleges and universities, and other food access organizations. For the last 4 years, we have fed upwards of 350 families a year, financed in part by our own fundraising, and then the local food purchasing agreement, which was canceled by the federal government. That enabled us to buy food from farmers who are embedded at World Farmers, where Helen's father was incubated when he first came to this country, and now has a thriving farm business. And so urban ag is a pathway to economic development. I really want you to take that away. And when you look at municipal and state policy, I'm very proud that HIP was piloted in Hampden County. Guarding the Community was one of the pilot sites, and now this is a funding source, and really, I think our biggest food is medicine program that we have, because every single person who receives SNAP receives HIP, which enables them to buy an additional produce benefit on top of their regular SNAP benefit. I know folks at DTA are already thinking of what might be our mechanism for delivering HIP should SNAP be cut. But I think that everybody who works with farmers, I know, would tell you that HIP, as Jason outlined, has been a tremendously financial boon for farmers, and very specifically for farmers of color, because we are so often, like in every other system in this country, we don't have access to mainstream anything. I will say that MDAR has done a tremendous job of broadening that access and working with all of us, no matter which doorway we come through, because of the generosity and commitment of Senator Gomez and Senator Oliveira. It was initially launched by Senator Lesser. The Food Policy Council received an earmark 2 years ago, and with that earmark, we've been able to buy more food from small farmers. We recently purchased a mobile market, which I'm thrilled about, because it was originally financed with MDAR money. And so we captured that market and kept it in Massachusetts. And we will be targeting elementary schools, going to schools before and after school, so that families can use their HIP benefit more easily. We've learned that you have to take the food to where people are. That commitment from the legislature enabled us to apply for a land lease with MDAR, and we secured that lease. We will be farming next spring 16 acres of land in Agawam, and that farm enterprise of the Food Policy Council is known as 40 Acres and a Mule Farm. We'll put a link in the chat. We're keeping the promise to the community that the federal government decided not to keep. And we have started convening many institutional partners in partnership with Farm to Institution New England to talk about how we can help them connect to farmers to make more institutional purchases. So that includes all of the area colleges and universities. Emily, do you have your hand up, because I'm out of time?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, I'm out of time, but I'm gonna, if you can put the next 2 slides up, Becca, just so folks can get a picture. This is the LFPA program. This is what an example of what we're able to produce on less than 1 acre in Springfield. These are our seedlings. Keep going to the next slide and I will shut up. And this is a food distribution. The young man that you see giving out food is a third-year medical student, and he's giving out the food that Helen's father grew. One of the things that we talk about is, in our grant writing, we talk about the people we serve. We don't talk about the people who don't get served. When this land to lot or lots to land bill passes, we will be able to serve everybody. And these are my little baby farmers that you see here. Thank you. I'm so sorry. Emily, I was ignoring your hand because I thought you were going to ask a question. I missed Helen's hand signals.
Thank you, Liz. And I also want to shout out Liz as a member of the board of the Mass Food System Collaborative where I work, and Liz has just taught me so much. I forgot to mention our Urban Agriculture Network at the beginning of this briefing, and that has really just taught me so much about the work that everyone does across the Commonwealth. So I just want you all to see these beautiful photos that Liz shared with us. And last but certainly not least, we have Shawnee Fletcher from the City of Boston's Grow Boston Office of Urban Agriculture, which sits within the Mayor's Office of Housing. Shawnee is wonderful. I'm so excited for us to be learning from her today. So Shawnee.
Thanks, Becca, and thanks everyone. It's really great to be here. Yeah, I work for the City of Boston, and we do a lot of different kinds of work, and I won't get into anything very broad just because of time, but the program that is our biggest program and that we sorry, I have to make myself small because I'll just be staring at myself. Okay. The program that we have had the longest and that is the biggest program that we run is the Grassroots Open Space Development Program. You can go to the next slide. And we the program is a program through which we are able to dispose of vacant lots that the city owns, that mostly has been taken into our inventory through tax foreclosure. We are able to dispose of that land at a very low cost and with federal funding, community development block grant funding, fund the development of community gardens or urban farms and other open spaces. Sorry, I'm a little under the weather, so I'm a little not as fluid as I sometimes am. Next slide, please. We have and as I mentioned, this is it's a long time program. The program has existed in some form for about 30 years. This is these last about 7 years. I was the program manager, and now Teresa Strachilla is our program manager. We've had the most staffing on this program, like one staff person devoted to this work, and it's definitely become the most robust I think that it's probably ever been. These are the overall steps that we go through in this development program to turn what is like a lot in our inventory, to go from someone having an idea about a lot in our inventory to having a project actually constructed and running. You can go to the next one. And I'm just going to touch briefly on each of these steps, and then yeah, we can, if there's questions later, I'm happy to answer them. So we have probably around 1,000 these days, vacant lots in our inventory that, again, as I mentioned, came into our inventory through tax foreclosure. And what usually happens is that someone will call us up and say, we're interested in starting a community garden or a food forest or an urban farm on this site. And it might be a community member who wants to see that kind of use of a space in their neighborhood, or it might be an urban agriculture organization that is looking to expand or looking to establish a space, and they can look on our inventory online and check in with us about, is this already in a pipeline for some other project, either open space or housing, or or is it something that we can pursue? And we do also sometimes go out into a community when we know especially if we have a few sites in a community, we'll go out just like at our own initiative and have open meetings about what would you all like to see at these sites. But really, our program at this point is such a deep pipeline that we don't need to, and we don't really have time to start new conversations unless there's some sort of pressing need to establish the use of a vacant lot. Because there's just so many, we are getting inquiries kind of regularly about like new spaces. You can go to the next page. And what's really central to the success of the grassroots program is that we are really guided by what the community wants to see. So if there are groups that are interested in establishing a space on a city-owned lot, they really need to do the organizing in that community to make sure that the community is interested. And if there are concerns by the community members about like what would an urban farm look like, or what kind of smells might we experience, or what kind of activity would be happening in this community garden, that group can assuage concerns and fears in advance of a more formal process by the city. And then we also have our conversations with leaders in the community, with organizations, neighborhood groups, and then eventually have a public community meeting. You can go to the next page. We do and I'm not going to get into all these details again because of time, but we do we're required with land disposition to do a competitive request for proposals process. And so we do that process with like guidance from what the community has said they want as the uses of the space. So, but we can, in most circumstances, we can sell the land through an RFP process for $100 a parcel because it will have a public benefit. And we just have to demonstrate that. It has to be demonstrated in the proposals we receive, and then when we make a recommendation to the Public Facilities Commission, we have to make clear what is the public benefit so that we can lower the price so that it's not a market rate sale. We also often, if it's in a certain neighborhoods, and if it's a nonprofit applying, we can often offer funding to help support the development of an urban agriculture or other open space on these parcels through that RFP process. Next page. can you do this next slide? That one showed up twice somehow. So there's a whole long bureaucratic process, which if anybody wants to know the details of how this works, I'm very happy to have calls, or Teresa can have calls with people and tell you. But basically once we've determined which proposer is the most advantageous, we have to go through a couple different steps with the Public Facilities Commission before we get to the closing process. So the whole thing can take like easily 12 to 18 months from like an idea to construction. Really including construction, 18 months would be a reasonable guess. So it's not very quick, but it is a program that we're really proud of because we are able to offer land at such a low cost for these like programs that are really beneficial for the community. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah, I won't get into any more of this detail, but yeah, we can skip this one. That's just some more detail about funding, and I'm happy to share these slides with people. So there's a couple of projects that we've done recently. This is a community garden in Lower Roxbury, which is right by the south end. And this garden had been here for a really long time, and they needed to do a complete overhaul. And also they wanted to they did not own the land. So we went through a process of doing both of those. We've sold them the land already. That was more than a year ago now. And they have recently finished building out the garden with these new beautiful raised beds. And the next slide. This is one of the projects that it was one of the first projects I worked on when I started almost 7 years ago. We were trying to could we find some parcels, and Mattapan has actually not that many. It's a neighborhood of Boston that has not as many vacant lots. And this one was one that was landlocked. So there's houses all around it, but it was a pretty big parcel, and we knew we weren't going to build housing there. And we talked with the Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition, and then they partnered with Boston Food Forest Coalition to develop a food forest concept, which, as you can see, is like incredibly beautiful. We've also done like our largest parcels in this program are usually around 10,000 square feet. We have one that's in that designation phase now, where Boston Farms Community Land Trust is going to be building an urban farm on a 10,000 square foot site. But a lot of those parcels end up being more like between like 4,000 and 6,000 square feet. And I wish I had more pictures to show, but we have lots of examples. We've really been doing like building out urban farms and gardens and food forests and other open spaces for decades now, basically using the same model, which has been really exciting. And I feel like we're really lucky to have this in place. And I can stop there.
Thanks, Shawnee.
Oh, actually, I just want to say, I do want to add about the bill, specifically to the bill, sorry, that I was so thrilled to see this come online and be sponsored. And thanks so much to the representative and senator for your work on that, and to the collaborative also, certainly, because in our case, we do have access to this federal funding. And of course, we all know that we cannot count on that long-term necessarily anyway, but we know that also that other communities don't have that funding possibility. And to have a diversity of ranges of options for the investment in building out sites, but also acquisition of sites is really, I think, would be so powerful for so many communities across the state. And I really also appreciate that the bill has, it's not only narrowly focused on it, there's so much possibility in the different options that could be funded through what is being proposed. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Shawnee. That was very tight. I appreciate it. So we have a couple minutes left for questions, but I did just want to recap. You all have heard today from some really important practitioners in urban agriculture. Thank you so much, Jason, Liz, and Shawnee, for sharing about your work, especially Shawnee, like talking about the work that this takes at a municipal level. Liz and Jason for talking about all the different aspects to urban agriculture, not only food production, but also how it connects to health, climate change, environmental concerns. And of course, Representative Duffy and Senator Gomez for being the bill sponsors. We just really appreciate it. Again, these bills, this is the first session that they've been introduced, and this would allow MDAR to make grants, depending on state appropriations, to municipalities to support the conversion of vacant lots and underutilized spaces into community gardens, urban farms, and other agricultural enterprises like food forests. It would also allow MDAR to make grants to municipalities to create plans in support of converting vacant lots to urban agriculture. I put the link to the 2023 Resilient Lands Initiative in the chat so you all can review it when you have time to read a report, right? Because we're also busy these days. But I did just want to highlight one statistic from that report, which identified that there are about 28,000 vacant lots across the Commonwealth, equating to 34,000 acres of underutilized land in environmental justice census tracts within the state's 45 cities. So this is something that we can do as a Commonwealth if we make it a priority. And I think that you've heard so many different reasons why these bills are needed. This bill was written before the current federal administration came into office, but I do think that our current political moment brings a lot of urgency, and I know that many of my partners across the food system feel the urgency to continue to be able to feed their neighbors. Liz, especially, just as one of my extremely involved board members, really just hammers this home every time we talk, and I just appreciate her so much for doing that. So I will stop talking so we can get to Q&A, but for advocates, I hope that you'll join us in advocating for this bill, and for legislators and staff, if you have not already co-sponsored this bill, I would ask you to consider doing so. So with that, I would love to hear if any folks have questions or comments, or something you're excited about to learn about with this bill.
Becca, could you put that stat or where it is, where we can find that in the report in the chat, or somebody? That would be, I was trying to write it down really quickly, but I couldn't. Or just email it to me. That would be really helpful.
I will do that. Yes, thank you, Chair Blay.
This is the shyest group I've ever seen, Becca. You know, one of the things that Jason and I maybe didn't note, Jason noted, obviously I can tell you as a farmer, and you know, as human beings walking around in these heat that we've been having this year, Springfield is in a terrible drought. The work that we do is a climate change mitigator. We talk about tree canopy, but anything that we plant in urban centers helps cool the planet. And Jason and I both are working, and I live in the community with the highest asthma rates and other air-related diseases, and not just the Commonwealth, but across the country. Springfield used to be #1. I think we're at #8. Now we went to #11, and now we're going back up. So, and then there's the mental health piece. If I didn't farm, I would have had a nervous breakdown during COVID. My kids tell me that the only time they feel calm is when they're at gardening the community and knowing that they're helping feed their neighbors and growing food. Some of you garden, you know how it makes you feel when you go outside and just be engaged and touch nature and remember from whence we all came. So it is my deep hope, prayer, everything, that we can fast track this legislation. Somebody who's watching federal policy really closely, the impacts are going to be horrific for communities across the Commonwealth if these wretched cuts go into play. And we have to be ready to take good care. We're all, from everybody on the screen, is working hard to take care of people. And we just need to be more equipped to do so. So for the representatives and their staffers, please work with Becca in any way, anything that I can do to help us to move this along. I know legislation is a slow process, and I want you to feel the same level of urgency that I feel. So grateful, Becca.
I see there's a lot of chatter in the chat. Thank you, Liz. And just to be clear, we would absolutely love to present to the Gateway Cities Caucus. That's like kind of a next step on my list. And I will send out the link to the Resilient Lands Initiative with our follow-up email to this wonderful briefing. And I think it's really important to name that we have both advocates and legislators as well as agency staff in the room. And I think it takes everyone to get a bill over the line. And I also just want to share my appreciation for Rosa Ruta's work, as well as Catherine Otto, who has been leading the implementation of the Farmland Action Plan at MDAR, the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. So with 2 minutes left, again, I just want to reiterate that for legislators and staff, we would love it if you have not yet to co-sponsor this bill and to consider advocating for it with us. I believe, and Chair Blake can obviously correct me if I'm wrong, that this bill will be heard at the Joint Committee on Agriculture and Fisheries September 16th hearing. So advocates, we'll be sending out a toolkit for you to use soon, and we'd love to have you testify in support of this with us. And obviously, Chair Blake, feel free to chime in if you want to add anything to that.
No, we'd love to hear from you. And Pat, Senator Gomez will be following up soon. You got it on the calendar. We're good.
right, with that, unless I know there are so many practitioners on here who have also been doing this work in their own communities. You all should feel free to jump in. You are really the experts on this. But with that, um, I know it's a busy week. So if anyone else has anything to say, either jump in or else we will let you get back to your day. And we really appreciate you coming to this briefing. So thanks so much, folks.
Thanks, Becca.
Thanks so much, everybody. Thank you so much. And September 16th, it's going in the calendar.
Thank you, Rep. Duffy.
Oh, thanks, Becca.
And your marching orders to answer Ruth Goldman's question are talk to every single person you know about this bill and encourage them to support urban ag organizations no matter where they are. We, Jason Nuestris and GTC would love your support, but when Mill City Grows advances, we advance. When any of the Boston organizations advance, we advance. So look around your neighborhood and help folks.